Hi, I'm Chris from the Conservatorium of Music. This video follows on from a previous video I made about seventh chords. In this video, I'll talk about the diminished triad, the augmented triad, and then some ninth chords. Before I do, let's just go over what we're looking at here on this screen. This is the MIDI editor from Ableton Live 11. You don't need to know anything about Live 11. All I want you to do is just pay attention to what you're hearing and measure it against these two keyboard layouts. This one displayed vertically here and this one displayed horizontally here. You'll see here I've placed the note G, and you know it's the note G because it lines up in that space on that vertical keyboard. When I play the note, you'll see the note light up down here. Okay, let's get into it. We'll start with the diminished triad. We can think of a diminished triad as being starting from a minor triad, but with a lowered or diminished fifth. So here's the minor triad, and now if I lower or diminish the fifth, here's our diminished triad. Now, as in the previous video, I'm going to be building all of these chords in root position. Let's move to our augmented triad. So the augmented triad we can think of as being built from a major triad. So here's our major triad. But instead of diminishing the fifth this time, we augment or raise that fifth. So major triad, augmented triad. And note here the symmetry, the consecutive major thirds of the augmented triad, and then with the diminished triad, consecutive minor thirds. Okay, let's move on to some ninth chords. The first chord that I'm going to speak about is the dominant ninth. And it's called the dominant ninth for a reason which I'll get into in just a moment. But for now, let's build it. So in the previous video, I talked about the dominant seventh chord. Dominant ninth is an extension of that. So we'll start by building our dominant seventh. We've got G, B, D, there's our major triad. Then our minor seventh above the root to make the dominant seventh chord. Now the dominant ninth is simply a ninth added on top, and that will be a major ninth from the root. So dominant seventh, and now dominant ninth. Now, as with the dominant seventh, the dominant ninth is so called because of its function. It appears often on the dominant chord of the key that we're in, and its function is to resolve to the tonic. So if G is the dominant, chord 5, that means C is chord 1. So let's resolve this G dominant ninth to a C major chord. So as with the dominant seventh, the seventh resolves down by step to form the third of the tonic. The third of the dominant chord is the leading tone. That rises by step. The ninth also resolves by step, and this is downward. So in this case, this resolves down by a whole step, and then we can just carry this G through here. So here's our dominant ninth chord, and now resolving to the tonic. Now there is a variation to this. Note that this ninth, it's a major ninth from the root. There is a dominant minor ninth, where the ninth is a minor ninth from the root. Okay, let's hear what this chord sounds like. It is much more dissonant and unstable. Compare that sound to the major. So that's the dominant ninth with the major ninth above the root. And now the dominant minor ninth. It creates a lot of tension there and drives even more strongly towards the tonic. So let's hear the resolution. Okay, so that is the dominant ninth, two flavors there. So let's talk about another couple of ninth chords now. The first of these is the minor ninth. And the minor ninth is simply a minor seventh chord. So that's the minor triad with the minor seventh. So remembering the sound of that minor seventh chord. And to make the minor ninth, we add the ninth. And that will be a major ninth above the root. So minor seventh, and now minor ninth. The major ninth chord, let's just strip this right back. The major ninth chord is built from a major seven chord. So we have our major triad with the major seven above the root, and then the major ninth above the root. So let's hear the major seven, and now with that ninth added, the major ninth. Okay, so these previous two chords, the minor ninth and the major ninth, again, you're not going to hear these too often in particularly classical common practice music, but you might run into them more frequently in Western art music from the 20th century and beyond. And you'll certainly run into them in modern popular styles of jazz and blues and so on. The final chord I want to talk about is called the half diminished seven chord. Another name for it is the minor seven flat five. And the way we construct this is we build a minor seven chord. So on G, we have G, B flat, D, and F natural to make our minor seven, but it's a minor seven flat five. So here's our fifth, and we flatten that, diminish it by a half step to form our minor seven flat five. So note that the bottom three tones of this chord are the diminished triad that we started out with at the beginning of this video. So here's our diminished triad, and with that seventh now. Okay, this chord also resolves very satisfyingly to the tonic if it's functioning as a dominant chord. So let's do that. So our G will drop a perfect fifth to C. Our F resolves down by step to form the third of C. We can carry this G through, and then this B flat here will rise to C. And note how these two tones here, the D flat and the B flat, converge upon the tonic. So let's hear that minor seven flat five or half diminished seven chord, and now resolving to the tonic. Okay, that's enough for this video. Just to recap, I've talked about the diminished triad, the augmented triad, I talked about the dominant ninth, two flavors, and we've looked at the minor ninth, the major ninth, and we just finished up then with the half diminished seventh.